What happened? What happened to the guy though that you had employed? Oh, there we get it. There we get it. I got a funny feeling it's a Men in Black tonight. Okay, let's try him on again. Always at the plot too, isn't it? Okay.
Do we lose? We lost ourselves again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was so upset because I had a family and we really needed that job, to put food on the table. That we walked outside of this guy's building, and I fired that kid on the spot.
Oh yeah.
I've never done that in my life. I've had a lot of employees before. I've never done it since. I'm ashamed of having done it. He had it coming, but even so, and he went back. Now listen to this. He went back to his vitamin company. He was the son. And now this may be shocking, but he had a meteoric rise through the company and became president. Hey, just goes to show you, right?
Wow.
So, yeah.
But the whole point is you instructed him not to say anything, and then he opened his mouth. I mean, that's just like giving a presentation, like the same way when I was in broadcasting, when I was going from job to job, because, broadcasting, you never know how long you're going to be at a station. It's all about ratings and everything. And if somebody sends back then a audition tape, they're better than you, or happens to walk in with one, and the program, director, likes it, then they start looking at, okay, which person are we going to get rid of? But, it's the same thing. I mean, the guy really, he could have destroyed you from the standpoint, you build somebody up and they're so excited, and then you drop a bombshell, which is, wow.
Yeah, and the worst part was it was probably the biggest job we'd ever landed. And we had it if the guy had just kept his mouth shut. And we would have brought a team in of really good writers and people and come up with an idea that everybody loved. But that's the thing, It's just, and you can't control that sort of stuff, as you know well. I mean, stuff like that just happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. So
you learn. Yeah,
you do. And you were in broadcasting. You and I were talking a little bit about it. And you were there during the great heyday of the trades before the IRS stepped in and wouldn't let people do it. Am I right about that?
I think so, yeah.
Well, as you know, one of the weird things, and I think you even worked in Las Vegas at a station, right?
Me? No. No, I haven't. One of my people I used to have on my network did.
Oh.
Kind of.
Well, I was in broadcasting, and I got involved, back in the day before the stations all were bought out by the big companies, Shamrock and other people, running a local radio station. Very few people had experience with it. You have. But running a small local radio station, it was like being in the carnival business, really. I mean, the owners would never pay for anything. They would take unsold airtime and trade it for cars and all kinds of stuff. And so I fell in with this guy that owned a radio station in Las Vegas, and he called me up one day. He was kind of a legend in the business, but a real character. I finally left after a very few weeks because I was just kind of uneasy with it, And he called me up and he said, "Hey, come into Las Vegas. I bought the station. Its signal would get to the edge of Las Vegas, but no further. But there was nothing else out there." He said, "What we'll do is we'll make it a trade-only station. We'll just sell commercials for trade, restaurants and lodging. We'll live like kings. Come and work with me."
Yeah, and I've been in a couple of those situations, yeah.
Yeah. And I went there, and it was just full of all these weird characters. And one day, this guy, his name was Frank, called me in his office, and he said, "Well, we need money." And I thought, well, yeah, I'm not surprised at that. And he said, "You and I are going to sell a cash advertising contract to Jim's Bail Bonds." Now, Jim's Bail Bonds in Las Vegas was run by a loan shark, a huge loan shark, and his son, who was reputed to be as mean as a rattlesnake. And I just thought, boy, and Frank said, "Well, I've even created a commercial for them. You remember how we used to do sample commercials?" So Frank plays it for me, and there's a stentorian disc jockey voice, and backed by beautiful music, and it talked about if you ran into trouble with the law, call Jim's bail bonds and whatever. And then Frank said, I'll give you the account. Let's go in. We've got an appointment. Even law enforcement couldn't get an appointment with Big Jim, right? He said, we got an appointment. Let's go in and pitch him, and you'll get the account. And I thought, okay. So we went into the office and were ushered into the conference room, and there's this one guy who had to be Big Jim, and this other young guy with razor-cut hair and terrible clothes who had to be his son, Little Jim, this rattlesnake guy. And he opened up by saying, this is really a stupid idea. We don't need any commercials. And Frank says, well, I've got a sample commercial for you to listen to. And the son says, we don't need to hear any stupid. And Big Jim said, play it. So Frank pushes the button on his tape recorder. Now, Gary, instead of the sweet timbre of the disc jockey's voice, out came Frank's voice, backed by minor key organ music. And Frank says, hit your mom with an axe. If you have money in the bank, here at Jim's Bail Bonds, we don't care. Shot your wife and buried her in the desert. If you have equity in real estate, here at Jim's Bail Bonds, we don't care. The kid was so mad. His eyes were actually bulging. I've never seen somebody's eyes bulge before. And he started to throw us out, and then you could hear his dad, it sounded like his dad was strangling. Actually, he was laughing so hard, tears were streaming down his face. And he looked over at us and he said, well, that took some sand. I mean, you guys are really stupid. He said, but that took some sand. And he said, I'll give you your contract on one condition. And I thought, oh, boy. And Frank pushes over this big contract, all cash, 1 year on the air, all cash, up front. And Frank says, what's the condition? And Big Jim, the loan shark, says, you give me the copy of that commercial, and it better be the only copy. And you never run anything there without my approval. You got it, Frank said. Got the contract. Out we went. And I always thought that the loan shark wanted that commercial, Gary, to bury it. But years later, Frank told me that, in fact, Big Jim, the loan shark, played that commercial at parties for 3 years, right up until he went to jail.
Until he went to jail? Oh, wow.
Yeah, for loan sharking.
Oh, wow. I remember working in some radio stations, that the owner would come up and say, hey, look at my brand new pickup truck. I just bought it and paid cash for it, right? Or I just bought a brand new boat, right? And then the next day is payday, and he goes up to everybody and says, well, I can't pay you. I don't have the money. Yep. And you look at him and go, well, you just told us you just bought this boat or you just bought this car and you paid cash for it, and now you can't pay the employees. Yeah. Don't worry. Oh, yeah. My wife, we own a restaurant in town. You can eat for free, and, I'm going, well, gee, I worked in this. You were in local radio, weren't you?
I
worked in, I hate to say it, the very second job I got in radio was in Forks, Washington. That's where they made that movie, vampires and stuff. Anyway, I got this job, and they hired me. At that point, I was trained by some of the top DJs. They had a broadcasting school called a radio show. It was Charlie Maynard and, God, I can't remember the other person's name, but they were like the top DJs on the West Coast. And I got out of the class. I was one of the best students they said they ever had. Of course, they probably said that to everybody. And this radio station contacts me and says, hey, we want to go from country to top 40. When can you be here? And I said, I can be there tomorrow. And they said, fine. So I get there, right? And they listen to all my audition tapes. Oh, we love it. We love it. We love it. Hey, we own apartment complex. You don't even have to pay rent. You can just move in, right? And I said, okay, cool. I move into it, And then a week later, I'm doing a board shift, and it was owned by, I didn't realize he was Mormon. And they sent two of the missionaries over during my show when I'm doing, I remember it was a song playing, Bee Gees, Fanny or something. And here's these two missionaries sit down in the control room, right, with a slide projector.
No, really?
Yeah. Well, it got really, I'm freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, they told me, well, if you want to keep your job, you got to go to church. And I'm going, okay, well, gee, I wonder if I can start looking for another job. Then they introduced me to their daughter. And
yes.
And yeah, she was okay. But then the next week later, they're talking about getting that I'm marrying their daughter. And the mother's sitting there showing me wedding invitations. Now, I'll be honest with you. I knew the daughter as so much as seeing her in church. And they're talking about now I'm going to marry her. And I'm freaking out. And I remember going up to Buddy Howard. That was his name and owned it. And I told him really nicely, I said, I don't even know your daughter. Why would I marry her? And, and he got all upset. The next thing I know, they're telling me to move out of the apartment. They get a cot and they put it next to the transmitter in the in the radio station.
Oh, you're kidding, really? Oh, that's rich.
I did that for 2 nights, and then I think on the third night, I snuck all my stuff out and I left. And never even. That was it.
Oh man, put a cot on the transmitter. The microwaves were probably frying your brain,
or other things.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
there's no business on the planet like the old days of local radio. Truly.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the everybody thought you make good money. When you're starting out, you don't make good money. I can tell you that. I mean, when you get a name going, then you make actually really good money. But job security was never really. You're looking at if you're at a station for a year, you were, hey man, this is doing good.
Yep. It's like the old song about I am the morning DJ. I don't remember the singer. He got himself killed one time. Well, you can only get killed once, as far as I know. And but yeah, it's just a constant. It's a revolving door, no matter how good you are.
Well,
most of it's out of your control.
My very first job in radio was up in Battleground, Washington. That's up by Vancouver, Washington. And they were a top 40 station. They hired me. They paid for me to move there and all that stuff and got me all set up. The day I was supposed to do my show, I walk in there and everybody's staring at me. And I'm going, did I forget to put my pants on or something? And the owner and the program director said, come in the office. And I did. And they sat down. They said, we're not doing top 40 anymore. We're now news and talk radio. Now, I'll be honest with you. I never, I went to broadcast training. I never practiced to be a talk show host or anything.
Yeah. And
they said, well, if you want the job, then you have to do a radio show. And I go, I know nothing. I'm young. I know nothing about the current events. I knew who the president was and our governor, but they said, no, you pick a subject. And I'm sitting there, and there's a newspaper, and at the time there was people disappearing in that area, and there was a cult in the area where they figured at that time, before they caught them, they were taking people and then sacrificing them and doing weird things.
Oh man,
that's how I got into paranormal talk radio.
It's just you never know. But the thing is, I think there is things when you get out there. If you put yourself out there, stuff happens, and if you don't put yourself out there, I have a guy I worked with years ago who very bright. I liked him very much, good writer, and this goes back a few years. We're just starting to do software and stuff, and he was living in Indiana. Nothing wrong with Indiana. I was born there, so. But he had a mantra. He always told me, I don't know what had happened, something in his family or something, where his whole drive in life was to be secure, to live someplace and buy a house, and he got a job with the state. And so 30 years go by, and I had the opportunity to talk to him again because of some strange circumstance. And there was a regretful, bitter guy. I mean, he lived a great life and retired from the state, had a pension and owned his own home and was paid for, but he was full of rage and regret because he felt his life had gone by and he'd never tried it. He'd never gone for it. Going for it doesn't mean you're going to succeed. But if you don't go for it,